So in this example, we're going to play a slow blues in the key of G. And the chord progression is a typical blues form. The one chord is G7, and it goes up to a quick change. So the 4 chord is C7, back to G7 for 2 bars. Then it goes to 4 chord C7 for 2 bars, and back to the 1 chord G7 for 2 bars. Then we go up to the 5 chord for 1 bar, so that's D7, and then 1 bar on the 4 chord C7, back to the 1 chord G7 for 1 bar, and then we get a turnaround. We're going to play a turnaround lick that takes us into the last bar, the 12th bar, which is the 5 chord D7. And then it starts over. So that's, very typical and nothing new there really. Now, what is cool about this example is that it's been played in 12/8 time, which is a very common thing in slow blues tunes. So let's try and clear that up first of all. What is 12/8 and why is it called that? Well, it's actually pretty simple. So each bar or each measure is divided into 12 eighth notes. So one way we can illustrate that is if I play for 1 bar, 1 measure, or rather I'll count just up to 12, and you'll kind of hear it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and then it starts over. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And these 8 notes are divided into groups of 3. So if I hit the chord after 3 8 notes, you'll kind of hear it. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. That's 12 because I did 1, 2, 3 4 times. And that's the length of 1 measure, 1 bar. Right? Clear as mud? But the most useful way to count this is to do like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and because that's it makes more sense. We don't have to worry about any details, and it makes it easier to also get the feel for where we're going to play licks and chord movements and all that kind of thing. All right, I hope that makes sense. That's all there is to it for slow 12/8 blues. Now for this tune, we're going to play sliding 3-note chord voicings. It sounds like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and so on. So before I show you the rhythm, let's look at the chord voicings. These voicings come from the ones I've shown you before, 6.6 and 6.7. As you recall, they look like this. And so I have taken this chord voicing and removed the thin E string. So I just get this. And then I take that grip and move it a whole step this direction. I get this. So that means you could play this 4-note chord voicing if you wanted to. But it's a little tricky to do that in this case because we're going to be sliding these chords. So the fewer fingers you have for the chord voicing, the easier that becomes. So let's look at the first one. The first note is the root note G. Then I have the major third, and then we have the 6th or the 13th on top. So it's not really a dominant chord voicing just yet, because there's no minor 7th in it. But we're sliding it down a whole step, and now the starting note becomes the minor 7th, and then the 9 up here, and the 5th on top. So it's really a handy little grip to use when you're playing well, almost any kind of blues. You can use this a lot in blues. Just think about the shape of this grip, and that the first note, that's where the root note is, and you take that grip and slide it down a whole step, and you get the minor seventh in there. So you get a G9 by doing this. And from here, I can show you another voice that I've shown you before, this 9 chord. In that case, we have the root note on top. So, I mean, you see, I hope you can see that there's a lot of usage out of these voicings. In fact, you can experiment with any of these 4-note chord voicings and remove one note from the voicing and see what you get. That's what we've basically done here. Remove the thin E string, and we get these ones. If you remove the D string, you can even do that. Now it's hard to play the sliding notes, but just as an example of the sound. Right? Sounds cool too, right? So I encourage you to experiment with these chord voicings that I've shown you and try to remove one note from, especially the 4-note voicings, and see what sound you get. There's nothing wrong with that at all. Now let's have a look at how I play them in time. I'm alternating between 2 ways of sliding these chords. The first one, it sounds like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and So let's analyze that one first. What's happening here is that I'm hitting the chord just before the 2 actually, and I slide it in from below. But the chord is going to ring on the 2. 1 and 2. See what I'm doing there? I'm hitting these 3 strings, but I'm approaching it from below. Like so I slide them in. Just 1 fret below is fine. And then on the 2 and I slide the whole grip down here without hitting the strings. So the chord is already ringing. At that point, I slide it quickly down here. And that happens on the 2 and So slowly. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and One more time. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and So we do that once. And then we play the second approach, which is slightly different. It sounds like this. Now in bar 2, we're on C, on the C7 chord, the 4 chord, right? So it's going to be up here. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and So the difference here is that, well, I start the same way. 1 and 2 and, but then on the just before the 3, I do another slide in from below. And then on the 3, I do the slide with the whole grip, the whole step down. So slowly. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and One more time. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and I hope that makes sense. And then we're back to the 1 chord. Now we're on bar number 3. So we continue this way, alternating between these 2 different ways to play the rhythm for the chord movements. So you alternate between doing the chord on the 2 and the 2 and and the second is the 2 and the 2 and as well as a 3. Right? So we keep repeating that, alternating, and that ends up being so that when you're on the 5 chord, we're going to do the first approach. So for the D7, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. And at that point, we're at the turnaround. And the way I play the turnaround is like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then we're back to the top. So let's have a look at that again. We are starting on the 2. So after the 5 chord, coming back to the 1 chord, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. It's important that you have the right feel for where those notes come. Let's do it one more time with the right hand view available as well. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. If you can't counter like that, then practice until you can, because it's important that you can do that without guessing. Otherwise you might mess up the rhythm of the turnaround, and that won't sound very good. But that's the gist of how we play the rhythm guitar for this example.